My name is Marlena White, and I am on the board of the Friends of South Carolina Libraries. I think I know most people in the room here, so hello, thank you for having me. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Good, because this is very interactive. I'm going to need some people to yell out. I'm going to ask some questions. This is very informal. So last year, the Friends of South Carolina Libraries sent a survey out to our members because we wanted to gather information about the Friends groups in South Carolina. We also wanted to find out what they were interested in and what they wanted to learn more about. And the top 3 topics were community outreach, increasing membership, and boards. What specifically about boards? Everything about boards. Who, what, where, why, how. Everything about boards was something that was a hot topic for all of the Friends groups that participated. I've only got 30 minutes, and so just to set expectations, I am not going to cover everything about boards in 30 minutes. That's not going to happen. If you gave me 30 days, I probably couldn't do it. If you gave me 30 months, I probably couldn't do it. Or, yeah, probably not in 30 years. That's probably because there's no such thing as a perfect board. Has anyone ever been on a perfect board? I'd like to talk to you. What we can talk about today is what I believe is the common denominator when it comes to a successful board, and that is questions. A warning, I've got some questions that I'm going to pose to the group today. I don't have an answer for every question today. I just don't. But at the end of the presentation, I'm going to show you a resource to find a lot of answers maybe for your specific questions. So here's a quick question. Let's get the party started. How many people in this room currently serve on a nonprofit board now or have in the past? I'm talking to the right people. Okay. So let's make sure that my technology is working. It'd help if I turned it on. All right, question number 1. What is the role of a board member? Any thoughts?
Governance.
Say again?
Governance.
Governance. Someone's got to be in charge of what the organization is doing. Where are they going? What are they saying? How are they paying for it? That's a role of a board member. Anyone else?
To know about the organization.
Thank you, Libby. That's a really good question. Being on a board is a lot of fun. It can be a lot of fun. But you need to know why you're there. What are you supporting? I'm not going to pick on anybody, but there are board members that may go, oh, who's that? That's the manager of the building that we're supporting. You know, like you may want to make sure that your board is educated on everything having to do with your nonprofit. So there's a lot of different ways we can define the role of a board member. And here's the one that I like. To provide ethical oversight of the nonprofit to ensure adequate resources are available so its mission and objectives are met. That's the one I like. So again, you're going to go, why do you just keep throwing questions at us? You're just throwing a lot of questions at us about what a board is and why and how. And at the end, there's going to be some good resources that will help cover a lot of these topics. So the next one's a little bit of a trick question because this actually has a specific answer. So there is a legal answer to this question. What are the legal responsibilities of a board? Anybody know what they are? It's not a quiz. We're not going to kick you out if you don't know. But there are 3 legal duties of a board member. Duty of care, and this simply put says that every board member is responsible for making good decisions on behalf of the organization. Yes, that sounds a little gray, but that is what duty of care is. Are you making good decisions for your organization? The second is duty of loyalty. Regardless of what advantage being on a board gives to you, you have to put the interests of the organization before yourself. Serving on a board looks really good on a lot of resumes, depending on the board, and also it satisfies a lot of checks for us. You know, we give back to our community and we can let others know that, but the mission of the organization has to come before any personal interests. And last is the duty of obedience. So it's each board member's responsibility that the organization is satisfying all of its requirements. Many of you know I do a lot of financial planning and a lot of financial services for nonprofits when I wear my get paid hat. And my favorite thing in the whole world is your organization is now in compliance. This is my favorite thing to say. So those are the three things that you are obligated to do when you do sign up for a board. It's not that scary though. It's okay, because probably if you're serving your time and your talent, you're giving of your talent, you're already doing all three of these things. So what makes a good board member? We can talk about what makes a bad one too, but what makes a good board member? How about they show up, right? Decisions are made by those who show up. So when you show up, you make the decisions. That's something. What else makes a good board member? Any thoughts?
Listen.
They listen. They listen. Listen more than we speak. I struggle. I do. But that's a really good point. Listen. Listen to the organization staff members that you're supporting. Listen to the community. Listen to your fellow board members. We'll talk about that a little bit too. But what else makes a good board member? How about somebody who has connections in the community?
Ask questions.
They ask questions. That's exactly right. And sometimes the board members who ask questions are the ones that are the most difficult, right? But that is how things are uncovered. That's how new ideas come to be. Or if the old ideas are working, that's how we solidify how things are going well, and we replicate it and write everything down so we have historical knowledge so the event or the program or the fundraiser can keep going. So they ask questions. Maybe they have money. Well, let's be frank. A board member with some money or some deep pockets can be very helpful. A board member with a little influence can be very helpful. So all of these things can make a really good board member. Sometimes the board member that makes a really good board member is not necessarily the one that you want, because that person may come in and say, this is not done well. The resources that I'm going to show you also give some tips on how to deal with some conflict on a board. My last note here, Grant, was good board members ask questions. Where do we find board members? Where are they? We need some for the Friends of South Carolina Libraries. Anybody want to be on the board? Most of us working in the nonprofit field have struggled with this. Where are the board members? So think about your last couple of board members who have come on your board. Where did they come from? Did they show up one day and say, I'd like to be on the board? That's probably not likely. But if that happens, you may want to go out and buy a lottery ticket. Any thoughts about where can we find them?
On other boards.
If you want something done, ask a woman. No. If you want something done, ask a busy person.
Yeah.
A busy person knows how to get things done. So sometimes we shy away from asking the busy person to join one more board or help you plan one more activity. But there's a reason that person's busy. So, how about community leaders? Community leaders. Business leaders. Business leaders like to be seen as supporting the community, and I think this entire day has shown that nothing is more community than a library. So there's an advantage to that individual to helping serve on the board to them. So again, board members just don't show up. If they do, really I'd like to learn about that. But board members may say yes when you ask them. So a lot of times it's the ask. Ask a question. Would you like to be on the board? Would you like to consider it? Would you like to know more about it? That's probably a better way to phrase it, because it doesn't scare someone as much. Give someone, give people the opportunity to put their toe in the water, see what they think. And the worst thing they can say is no. So, again, all these questions, Marlena, how do we prepare them? Okay, so someone has said yes and they're going to come onto your board. What have you done for your board members to prepare them? I would really love to hear. On your board, do you have a Terry?
In York County, we have an orientation day at the main library. Then several hours to bring people in from the library to talk about what the library does, and we orient them to what the board does.
That's a fantastic model. If you guys haven't heard Terry, he's talking about doing a onboarding orientation for new board members. Have you found it successful?
Oh, yeah. This past year we didn't do it because the only new board member was a repeat member that we've done in the past. Very simple.
How many people in the room have a repeat board member? They went off the board and then came back on. I've done it. But that's a really great example, and this is no disrespect to the free thinkers out there, but I like a game plan. I like to know what I'm getting into before I necessarily sign up or put my full effort and time into it. I want to know more about the organization. I'd like to know a little bit more about the board. You know, a little bit of an interview process. There's nothing wrong with that. Some nonprofits have handbooks, almost like an employee handbook, and that can be very helpful. You know, a list of information about the role, the position, and the expectations. That does need to be updated periodically. One of the things the Friends of South Carolina Libraries is going to do later in the day is we're going to vote on our updated bylaws, which had not been updated since 2009. And so a document like that, as helpful as it can be, it does need to be updated periodically. So sometimes just something simple as a one-pager, a document that has all the information about your organization, the contact, general do's and don'ts for being in that nonprofit space, if you're representing that nonprofit, just the general do's and don'ts of what the leadership would like you to stay in, you know, the guidelines, the parameters there. And then we've all talked about,
A
Grant?
little more elemental than that, just giving them a copy of the Constitution and bylaws. How many board members have never read the Constitution and bylaws?
That's a really good point. One of the documents for onboarding could be a copy of the bylaws. And that also gives a great opportunity for a fresh set of eyes to look at your bylaws
Exactly.
and see what maybe needs to be updated. I know a lot of people had to update bylaws after COVID because of the use of video meetings. Who's still doing video meetings? Anybody?
I should have added that when I went on the board, they gave me a handbook, a binder with bylaws, a couple months of the most recent minutes,
Mm-hmm.
all the other board members, and we also have a practice of giving a shirt to the new members that has the logo of the Friends chapter on it.
That's fantastic. I'm going to point out Friends of Lexington Main Library here and their matching shirts with their logos on them. And they show up, yep, there it is. There it is, ladies. But that's a really good point. So a binder full of the pertinent information on your role, where you can access the information. You're not asking the individuals to memorize that, but you're providing it as a point of reference if they have questions.
There's also another shirt here too. It's a different type of shirt. Devon, will you please stand up?
South Congaree, Pine Ridge, everybody.
Brittany, stand up and contrast. The reason I said that is to contrast the different design, because you can make that however and whatever style you want it to be. So it doesn't have to just be something really formal looking.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Of course. One thing that you may want to include in this information is to define the do's and don'ts for your board. Meaning, some boards just have different activities than others, and some solicit funds from different organizations compared to others. And I'm going to pick on Lexington, Maine again, because many years ago, many years ago, when I was associated with that organization, there was a heated debate about soliciting sponsorships for events. So the summer reading program brought to you by Budweiser. Yes or no? How do you know if it's yes or no? Unless you ask a question and find out what you're allowed to do. So you may not be able to lay out everything for your board members, but when you allow them an opportunity to ask questions, you're letting them know this is a safe space. They have a question. Budweiser may have a lot of money, but we may not want to put that logo all over the summer reading program. So again, there's not going to be a checklist of everything, single do and don't, but there can be some general parameters about what we expect you to do as a board member and what we expect you not to do as a board member. This one doesn't have a slide, but as I was preparing this, I started thinking about this. Are volunteers and board members the same thing?
No.
Sometimes they are.
Sometimes
depending on the size of your organization. If you've got 10 people on your board and 10 volunteers, that's your whole board, it's your whole organization, then they may all be volunteers. But that's a really good point. Not all of the stuff that we're talking about today with about board members may not pertain to all the volunteers in your organization. So then we start to think about whether or not there's two different points of contact, maybe two different chair people. You know, you have your board chair who's working on board documentation and board structure, board roles, and then you have volunteers. It's a little bit of a different animal. You have a lot of people that just want to come and I want to help with the book sale. Do not talk to me about being vice president ever. That's okay. We don't want to scare that person away either. So many questions. Again, I was clear up front. I'm not going to provide you answers to every board-related question. You'll all fall asleep and just keel over. But there's a lot of answers, and I really want to highlight them because the South Carolina State Library has paid for a membership for every library friend member in South Carolina to participate in United for Libraries membership. So when you go to United for Libraries, so just like your friends group is the local friends group, we're the Friends of South Carolina Libraries, so we're on the state level. Now we go to the national level. There's a membership with this organization that the South Carolina State Library has paid for everybody in this room. If you do not have login information, they will help you get it. This is the home page. This is the home page here. When you go up to, you see United right there, you go to Membership in United for Libraries and Access Member Benefits. Oh, there it is. Okay, right at the bar across the top, go to Member Center. I'm going to make this presentation available for everybody. Don't worry about taking notes. I'll email it out to everybody. But when you go to Member Center, it's going to provide you some information. And what you're going to want to do is log in here. And what you're logging into is the American Library Association's Connect site. If you don't have the information already, all you have to do is email United at ALA.org and they'll email you your login information. There it goes. And once you log in, it looks like this. It's very user-friendly. They have updated this recently. Last fall, we wanted to put together a program to promote all of the resources available for you. And they said, hold on, we're completely revamping the website. So if you have that presentation, it's going to be obsolete in about 3 months. So we waited a little bit, and now we have this. So this is mine. I am signed in here. And you have access to all of this different content. As we move through, we're going to go to United for Libraries, Board Members, Resources. Benefits and Resources. I've scrolled down the screen a little bit here and took a screenshot. Board Source is specifically what we're looking for. And if you're not familiar with Board Source, it's literally a resource for nonprofit boards. It's phenomenal. There's an annual membership cost to this that has been paid for you. You do not have to pay for this. So it's going to tell you here what you need. Name and email, organization, your affiliate, chapter, local office. So for example, if you are with the Friends of Richland, Foundation and Friends and Foundation of Richland Library, that's what you put in for your local chapter. And then you log in, and that is it. And it brings you to this page. This is scrolled down a little bit. The top part has a ton of information about boards. But when you click on each one of these, there are hundreds of articles, which is great. But who has time to read all those articles? No one. They're great references. There it is. This is what I like. Graphics, infographics, checklists. What do you need for your board? Here's a checklist. Oh, I love a checklist. Term limits, one-page graphic, all types of information. All of the different topics that we just saw here, each one of these has at least 100 different resources that you can print out. And as a member, when you click through, some of these will say member only. You have member access. You can download any of these and use them. So, again, really wanted to highlight this. This is something that the South Carolina State Library is paying for, but they have to renew it every year. So if they're not seeing the advantage of continuing to pay for it, then they may not renew it. It is renewed right now. Don't have a representative of the state library in the house with us right now, but I believe it's through July.
It's actually June 30.
June 30th. It's through June 30th. So until then, and if we get word that it gets renewed, we'll certainly let you know. Download all of these. They're free. All right, here's some additional resources that I wanted to share. The South Carolina, just gonna hold it. The South Carolina State Library, one of the services that Lisa was talking about before is they will come and do training for your board, for your Friends of the Library board. They can do that via Zoom or they can do that in person. So there's a lot of resource that the state library can provide. Together SC, if you're not familiar with that, that's another organization that provides support for nonprofits. They do it at a very high level and they do it for nonprofits across the state. And not just libraries, they do it for all nonprofits. And the National Council on Nonprofits, they've got some good resources as well. So if you're having issues with your board, if you want to find some best practices, if you're looking for ways to mitigate conflict, if you're looking for successful ways to have your meeting, you know, when, how long should you have it for? All of these are all really good resources on top of Board Source. So a couple of takeaways. My suggestion would be to brainstorm with the people that make up your circle in your friends groups. That could be staff, that could be friends, that could be volunteers, it could be board members. Ask them questions and don't be afraid of the answers. And also in turn, don't be afraid to give frank answers. You may not like the time of the day the board meeting is currently being held. Say something. You might not like the way it's being managed. You feel like it's a free-for-all. The only way people are going to know is if you say something. You may want an agenda a week in advance as opposed to an hour in advance. That's an easily fixed thing, but no one will know unless you actually say something. So a brainstorming session could go ahead and gather some of this information. You're going to get a lot of ideas. Anybody have a brainstorming session recently? 3 pages later, you're like, well, okay, we're not doing anything right. Gather the information, review it with a fresh set of eyes, maybe a day or two later, and pick 3 things. Because if you have more than 3 priorities, you probably have no priorities. So choose 3 things that you can work on, that are actionable and attainable. Not in 4 years, but in 4 weeks or 4 months. It feels like you've accomplished something and you feel like you can tackle the next thing and then the next thing and then the next thing. I know I rambled on a lot. Does anyone have any specific questions about boards, or does anyone have anything they'd like to share, an experience that they've had on a board? Anybody have a board member ever storm out of a board meeting? No? I heard about one, but I wasn't there. Oh no, I was. I was there. She did storm out. Any questions? Any comments or questions about Board Source and logging into that? Does anyone currently have an ALA Connect password that they're using to get resources from the Friends of, or from United for Libraries? Kelly! This is a really good resource. United for Libraries does an annual conference, and it's virtual. They do it every August, and the recordings from previous conferences are on there. So, also for the next one coming up is, I believe, August 1st through the 3rd is coming up. It's a really great conference for Friends. And the nice thing about it is virtual, so people from across the country can get together. All right, well, I have rambled on for quite a minute. No questions about boards, or no one's willing to share?
I just
Kelly?
make a comment. I did not know that Board Source was available through United Libraries, and I had recently learned about it from Together SC. It's incredibly expensive to join yourself. So please policy review, and it's a huge benefit to all of us.
I'm gonna fast forward again real fast and just, I wish I could have shown you each individual one of these. You're lucky, because if I take this PowerPoint down and I put my computer up, we'll go down a rabbit hole and we'll look at all of them, and then you guys are gonna all leave. But again, each one of these topics has hundreds of pieces of information. Academic studies, surveys, data. Again, I love my one-pagers here. Lots of different information.
Marlena, which sections would you recommend that people start with so they're not overwhelmed?
That's a really good question. So where should you start when you're talking about a board? This is going to be a personal opinion, and I think a lot of this can be a personal opinion. Because again, if you have a perfect board, I'd like to know about it. Structure would be where I would start. So board structure, who is on your board, what are they doing, and can you describe to an outsider what your board structure is? If you can't, you need to review it. It needs to be reviewed. Moving along those lines, is your meeting time and day a good time and day? Is it always been Thursday at 3 o'clock and that's how we're just gonna do it for the rest of our lives? Or should we look at it? Should we poll our membership? If changing it is gonna bring in more people, then do we wanna do that? And then basic roles and responsibilities within that organization. I think that's a really good place to start. If you have all of those things defined and you're really happy with it and you have a bajillion people on your board, move on to the next one. Start with move on to strategic planning. But most of the nonprofits I work with and I'm associated with are always struggling for boards. This is going to be a constant topic. Boards are rotating all the time, so they're ever changing, so they always have to be looked at. If you have a board that's been the same board for 20 years, I don't know that that's actually a board. That might be a club. I don't think they're actually, it's okay for your board to have a good time. The Friends of South Carolina Libraries has a really good time when we get all together. Speaking of which, all FOSCL board members are required to take a photo before you leave for the end of the day. We're taking a group photo because we haven't taken one since COVID. Other than the one Jonathan takes when we do our Zoom meetings. He takes the screenshots.
Marlene, personal experience about time changing. We have a very small friends group, and it was beginning to be where there were only one or two of us at the meetings. And y'all, we got to figure out something here. How are we going to do this? So we took a census and just tried to figure out. But we moved the time to the morning, and now at the last meeting we had 7 people. Okay, where we've been having 2 in the evenings. The deal is, many of them were senior adults. They don't drive at night. They don't like to get out at night. They want to be where they're comfortable in their vehicle to get home. I'm like, let's go for it. I'm all for it. So we changed the time, and it seems to be working great. So don't be scared to get out and try something. I mean, you never know until you try it.
Exactly right. It's a really good point. How did they make that change happen? Ask a question. So it's really easy for me to stand up here and talk. It's really hard to translate it into action. How do you staff your board with a bunch of people who are going to go out there and find you all the money in the world and advocate to the best of their ability? I think brainstorming, that's a good place to start. So rather than just talking, you can actually go walking. Any other questions? Ma'am?
How many of the libraries in South Carolina are members of the Friends?
How many libraries? So Friends,
How many Friends groups are members of the Friends?
you would think that I would have that number memorized, but the last,
Let me read them.
you got them?
I got it.
Well, count them up. How many?
It's Batesburg, Leesville, Beaufort, Bluffton, Bowling Springs, Chapin, Chesney, Cowpens, Cyril, Westside, Dale, Webb, Georgetown, Greensea, Greenville, Hartsville, Inman, Lamar, Landrum, Lexington, Barnwell, McCormick, Middle Tiger Library, Orangeburg County, Pacolet Library, Pratt Memorial, South Congaree, Pine Ridge, Spartanburg, Surfside Beach, Woodruff, York, Oconee, and Richland. So that's a good portion of the groups. Not all of them are, but
Right.
And in each system, some systems join as the system, and then some individual friends groups join singly as a
Oh, I
group.
see.
So it depends on how your management is set up
Right.
within your county system. Louis?
Thank you.
Some libraries join for their friends group. So if your library, if your friends group is not a member, and you have several friends groups in your library, you might approach the library about joining for all of the groups, so that all of the groups will get the information.
Good point.
Susie?
Also, if your friends group chooses not to join for whatever reason, certainly I think there are a lot of reasons to join and it's money well spent, but if they choose not to, it's a minimal expense for individuals to join
Right.
on their own. I mean, a minimal expense. So if your friends group chooses not to join that year, you can certainly send in a check and be
Individually,
a member
yeah.
yourself.
That's a really good point. I have two quick other housekeeping things I'd like to say. First off, happy last day of National Library Week. So it's National Library Week. We appreciate everybody being here today to celebrate the last day of National Library Week. We didn't get a cake, we probably should have. And also I wanted to let you all know, you may have seen some of the signage we had outside, or your tote bag had a extra logo on it. But this program is being sponsored by the South Carolina Humanities via a grant that the Friends of South Carolina Libraries applied for. So funding has been provided for this program by the South Carolina Humanities. It's a state program of the National Endowment for the Humanities, inspiring, engaging, and enriching South Carolinians with programs on literature, history, culture, and heritage. Shameless plug.
They are a wonderful organization.
Yes, they are. And they just celebrated 50 years.
So it behooves everybody to belong to that organization.
Friends of South Carolina Libraries are proud members of South Carolina Humanities.
And they have wonderful grants too,
Yes.
even for smaller groups, not just a bigger statewide group.
Edgefield was fortunate enough to get Mr. Hawk to come and
Yeah.
speak to us, and so and I was totally unaware of it.
Wonderful.
He's a great resource.
Maybe during our idea exchange, Jonathan would be kind enough to share a little bit of information about how to get some of those wonderful authors through a South Carolina Humanities grant.
I would be happy to do that.
Well, thank you, everybody. We'll take a quick just reset here. We'll shut the PowerPoint off and we'll go into an idea exchange. If you want to get up and stretch and grab an extra drink real fast, then we'll come back and hear from you.
Great job.
We need to walk and say.